Good evening and welcome. This is a meeting of the Special Education Advisory Committee of the Halton District School Board for Tuesday, June 6, 2023, the final SEAC meeting of this school year. In accordance with Ontario Regulation 463/97 and guidelines effective February 1st, 2021, Halton District School Board promotes community engagement and participation by having processes in place for members of the public to ask questions. A Google form was attached to the agenda distributed in advance of the meeting and is also posted on the HDSB SEAC website page. Questions posed during live stream meetings of SEAC may be answered during that meeting, particularly those related to the agenda items or at the following meeting at the discretion of the chair. For efficiency, multiple questions received that are similar in nature may be grouped together at the discretion of the chair and/or vice chair. Questions will not be attributed. Notation will be made that multiple people ask the same question. Any questions that contain language that is hateful or discriminatory will not be considered. First, we will start with a roll call to record who is in attendance. Please answer yes or present. Naveed Ahmed. Carol Baxter.
Present.
Joanna Oliver. Robbie Bryden.
Present.
Kate Lambacker. How do you say it? Sarika Kanithi.
Present.
Alison Brindle.
Present.
Diane Vandenbosch.
Present.
Adina Torek. Evelyn Bursey. She said she was going to be late. Melissa Dockeray.
Here. Present.
Sarah Lansley. Sophia Siddiqui. Kathy Turner. She'll be late. Erin Sproul. Kaisa Klassen.
Present.
Katie Schleifer, present. Melissa Summer.
Present.
Colette Ruddock.
Present.
Lorna Goodrow. She's present. Conan Spruin. And Sean Marks.
Present.
Thank you. Now we will begin by honoring the land. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis, from the Anishinaabe to the Attawandaron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis. These lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions, land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that have walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. Okay, so our first step is to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. Are there any modifications or amendments that need to be made to the agenda? If so, please indicate your wish to speak in the chat box. Would anyone like to move a motion to approve the agenda? Carol, thank you. Would anyone like to second the motion? Kaisa, thank you. Would anyone like to move a motion to approve the agenda? Oh, that was an amendment to the agenda. So this is a move to approve the agenda. I can't see who that is. Someone messaging? Allison, thank you. Would anyone like to second this motion? Melissa? Thank you. Is there any opposition to the agenda as it stands? If you oppose the agenda, please indicate that now. Nothing being seen, the agenda is approved unanimously. Next is the approval of our May 2nd, 2023 meeting minutes. Are there any errors or omissions? Would anyone like to move a motion to approve the minutes? Carol, thank you. Would anyone like to second this motion? Melissa, thank you. Is there any opposition to the minutes as recorded? If so, please indicate that now. Okay, none being seen, the agenda is approved unanimously. I don't know if that's the agenda or the minutes. Okay, we are now going to the action items. So item 2.1. This is the special education plan vote. So everyone has had the opportunity to review the 2023-2024 special education plan. We will now take a roll call vote of who is in support of the plan as presented. The representative of each organization will be asked to state their position, and if they are absent, the alternate will be asked. Members at large will also be asked. Trustees will then feed back the results of the vote to the Board of Trustees. Okay, so we will be doing this alphabetically by association. So for the Association for Bright Children, Shrika, do you approve or?
Yep, I do approve.
You do approve? Okay. Allison, the Center for Diverse Learners.
Approve.
Nadina, the Community Living Burlington.
Approve.
Evelyn, Community Living North Halton. Is she not on yet? Okay, we'll just move on. Sarah Lansley, Easter Seals.
It's Melissa Dockery, and I approve the agenda.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. Did Sophia join? Okay. Do we come back to that? Okay. Kaisa.
Approved.
Approved. Katie Schleifer, approved. Melissa Summer.
Approved.
Kathy Turner, Voice for Children Who Are Deaf and Hard of Hearing. And if Kathy's not here, Erin Sproul? Neither are here. Okay. And Sophia still has not joined? And Evelyn has not joined. So that's 7. What do we do at this point?
So I would recommend that the special education plan based on the vote passes, but if
Okay.
we want to get the support of the associations who are not here yet, but perhaps join before the end of the meeting, if we want to get their support or non-support on record, we could do that on the agenda.
Okay, so at this point, it is approved based on the votes that we have today. Thank you. Okay, so now we are on to item 2.2. We have a presentation from Michelle Bates from the Student Wellbeing Department of Mental Health and Wellbeing Supports available to students.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Dean Barnes. I'm the superintendent for student wellbeing. I'm just going to kick us off for a bit, and then I'll pass over to Michelle. Just wanted to let you all know that we appreciate giving you the update and information at this meeting, whether it's 1 or 2 times a year. We do appreciate that engagement. Last week, we were able to attend the School Mental Health Ontario annual meeting, and Michelle Bates is our mental health lead, and other staff were able to share the work that we're doing in whole school mental health and well-being research, as well as youth engagement. So it was clear to me, participating and observing, that our board department, under Michelle's leadership and our other professional managers, really are leading work in the province in this area. And part of it is because of our collaboration within our team as managers. We'd also like to thank the Special Education Services Department. We collaborated with them intentionally this year along with the Human Rights, Equity, Indigenous Department, and Safe Schools. And much of our work is being centered in the school improvement planning, which you'll hear from Michelle. So just wanted to mention those higher level pieces to start out with, just to sort of thank you for your support, and I'll hand over to Michelle.
Thank you, Dean, and welcome everyone. How lovely to be here and to have this opportunity. So I'm just going to share my screen. I hope that that this works in our hybrid setting. And I believe too that we'll be able to link in any kind of meeting minutes directly to this slideshow. So please feel free to do that. Just to start off, as we begin this evening, I thought I would share these images because I think as we are reflecting on and coming together to be talking about mental health and well-being for students and for all, we think about each and every one of our students, and we think about the importance of compassion and holding people's hearts and holding our own hearts in this important work that we're doing in terms of embracing and understanding the whole person, the whole child. And then the image in the middle, I am a dog person. I'll own that freely. And I'm reminded of something that Dr. Jean Clinton said a number of years ago that really resonated with me, which was, you know, every one of us, every child needs somebody who lights up when that child, that adult comes into the room. And so when I look at this image of this dog is clearly connected, very happy to see this person. And that's what we strive to have for each and every one of our students, that as caring adults, we light up. And as we are having the privilege of being in the presence of your wonderful children. So for tonight, we're just going to give some updates that will include mention of some of the 3 research projects we have underway this year. I thought as a group, you might be very interested in hearing what the SIPSA well-being goals are, and then Dean will close us out with looking ahead. So just a reminder that our work is guided by and rooted within the mental health and well-being strategy. It is a 4 engaging in the development particular pillars or areas, and we'll mention highlights of some of the work that we're doing in each of these areas. So I'm going to highlight just a few changes, or a few, I guess, additions since we were last together. So I know when I was reviewing the slides from the previous time you invited us, thank you, just to share that a major initiative alongside, in partnership with our program department, has been to provide through live stream a series called Mental Health and Wellbeing in Action, and this is an experiential learning series. We do tape those, and those learning series are available for classrooms, not only on the live stream days, but subsequently. We have an elementary version, and then we also have a secondary version. It's really looking at well-being from a holistic and a whole person approach. And we have, some months we have 7,000 of our Halton District School Board students participating in that learning series. So we're really excited by the broad reach, and the feedback from students and teachers is quite positive about that series. And then my partner, Michelle McCann, who is our IPL, Instructional Program Lead for Student Wellbeing. In the month of May, we live streamed 2 speakers with lived experience. And again, the response was quite positive to that. And so we were excited to be able to bring that forward as an example of a way to understand the continuum of mental health and well-being and to help reduce stigma. So then in terms of the second area of our mental health strategy, it relates to a focus on mentally healthy school and classroom activities. So you can see there's quite a bit packed onto this slide. A lot of work has been happening in this area. So some of you may have heard about youth well-being teams. These are led in all of our schools by a lead educator who volunteers to do that work. And under that allyship and facilitation from those lead educators, those youth well-being teams, they have an opportunity to learn about mental health and well-being and to plan and promote mental health promotion and wellness and awareness activities in their schools. We've also had a very strong partnership with the Mental Health Commission of Canada, and they have something called Headstrong Summits. These are virtual summits, and we've been really excited by the really positive response from a number of our youth wellbeing teams who've been able to attend these summits. We're very grateful to the Commission because they provided us with a large number of spots for our youth wellbeing teams to participate in. I mentioned about our lead educators, and again, recognizing and appreciating the very important role that they play. We've provided a number of PD learning opportunities, and this is in partnership with the Indigenous Department, Equity Advocates. Our IPL hosts a regular networking session, and we also did release time for mental health literacy modules for educators. As many of you may know, we do have a lot of work that we do in the area of awareness of suicide and distress, and we have created in-house a Concerns of Suicide PD, and this year alone we have had 200 elementary teachers volunteer their time or to have some release from their principal in order to come to a Concerns of Suicide PD. Our reach also and our partnership also extends to guidance and student success. And you can see in response to their learning needs, they were wanting to know, how do we create effective circles of support? So as educators, when we're working alongside parents and other professionals in that wraparound circle of support for students with a mental health concern, how do we know what are the best approaches and what can we do to ensure that we are providing that all-important circle of support? As well, our partnership with special education through our CERT Special Education Resource Teacher Networking, there was a request for a session devoted specifically to students who have been identified as gifted, and so our IPL offered that session. And then finally, happy to share that through a motion from Student Senate, they have been working to develop a youth mental health task force, and that task force will launch in September, and they will be a regular advisory body to the mental health strategy and the yearly action plan. And it really highlights and speaks strongly to the level of youth engagement that is a part of our strategy, and we're so appreciative of the partnership that we have with not only our student trustees, Student Senate, but all students who are represented through the youth wellbeing teams. So then our third kind of area in our mental health strategy relates to mental health care and support. So again, lots of work here that's happening, and I'll just highlight a few of these. This year, we were able to develop and offer a pilot. We refer to it as a pop-up social work support to 3 of our intermediate schools. So what that meant was that a social worker went into all the grade 7 and 8 classes provided those students with some mental health literacy and awareness about mental health, and talked about the supports and resources available, including social work. This has resulted in more of our grade 7 and 8 students reaching out and requesting support from social work. And part of that is because we've reduced the barrier to students, because they can now self-refer for social work services when they are at the age of 12 and older, and when they are capable. And in our board, we presume that students are capable to consent unless it's demonstrated that they're not capable. You'll see we have lots of different types of groups that we have been offering, and again, it's in response to the needs that we're hearing from students. And then finally, an acknowledgement and an excitement that we continue to, for the 3rd year now, offer parent information sessions. And we have really good turnout to these, and we are really pleased to be able to continue to offer this as a way for parents to learn more about mental health and well-being, and it's also a really important engagement opportunity for parents. So now I'd like to shift and talk about the research projects. So you see here just a bit of background related to research, and so we're very appreciative to the research department. That 0.5 of one of our research officers' time is committed to student well-being. So here then is one of our projects Dean had mentioned. A whole school approach to mental health promotion. So we know that when students are learning about and they are practicing the skills of mental health promotion and awareness and literacy, that it helps. It is absolutely interconnected with achievement, with belonging, with feelings of being safe in the school, with feelings of well-being. Oftentimes, though, the decision to offer mental health literacy in any kind of extended, whereas we know that from the literature, when a school, everyone in the school decides to embrace this approach, and when this approach is led by teachers, it's the most effective. So we actually have had schools who have been doing that, and this year we were examining 3 particular schools, and you see them listed here. What's really interesting is the case study opportunity to talk to all of our stakeholders, including students, including staff who are delivering the program, and administration and support staff. And what's quite interesting is that each of these schools, they're using different mental health literacy resources, which varies in the length and the amount of time spent on that mental health promotion literacy instructions. We are in what we refer to as time 2, where more data is being collected, and we certainly look forward to being able to share the results. We believe that those will lead to some really important action items going forward. Some of you may have heard about our second research project. It relates to the student survey. In this anonymous online survey, we asked students about their awareness of mental health resources and their experiences with help seeking or help receiving. We were really pleased that we had a number of students. We asked students if they would like to be involved in developing the questions in the format. And that was a very enriching experience and led to some really, really important improvements and developments for that survey. Our approach was to do a stratified sample, so 42 schools randomly selected, 1 grade per school. Plus also students who are currently receiving help from our mental health psychologists, social workers, or CYCs, were also approached and invited to participate in the survey. We're really excited to see that just over 1,600 students responded to the survey. And again, we're looking forward to the data and the recommendations that will be forthcoming. We're really happy with this level of engagement and the survey results. As many of you, I know some of you here, and you've been very much a part of helping us with the parent focus groups, which then led to the parent survey. And so this link was sent out to all parents. Again, a voluntary and anonymous online survey. And you can see the kinds of things that we were inquiring about. And again, super thrilled to share that almost 1,700 parents responded to the survey. So a real high level of engagement. Our research department is really pleased with this level of response. And again, we're quite excited to be able to look at the data when our research department has a chance to do that and to be able to share that and bring that back, hopefully, to all of you. So this next item relates to sharing the school improvement student achievement goals. And so the board established these well-being goals. And so you'll notice that they relate to, students who are experiencing bullying, feeling safe at school, having a sense or an experience of positive school climate and sense of belonging. And you see within each of these three sentences, there are targets. What's of particular importance is based on the census data, we can see that it's very important for all of our schools to address the disproportionalities because we know that students who are Indigenous, Black, gender diverse, sexually diverse, and students with IEPs, they have a disproportionate experience when related to these particular questions. And so I just thought that I would share with all of you that part of the learning during the Family of Schools meeting as we were rolling out and sharing these SIPSA well-being goals is we were really encouraging all of our administrators to move beyond the traditional thinking that they have and the traditional responses to improving belonging, safety, and well-being, and instead to really look at and address the very important historical and ongoing experiences. And so as a department, myself and my colleague and other members of our department will be supporting schools with their bullying prevention and intervention plans. So we're excited for this work to be happening. And now I'll turn it over to you, Dean.
Yes, thanks, Michelle. So going forward, we are excited to continue on our work centered with the school improvement plans, and they have bullying prevention and intervention goals, which Michelle has highlighted. We're also going to be continuing on looking at the data we get back from the research projects we've taken on this year and looking forward to planning for next year. With support from School Mental Health Ontario and our Mental Health Action Plan, we'll continue to expand upon our every student, everyday classroom activities. And within the Student Wellbeing Department, we have that Indigenous Equity and Human Rights team of clinicians. And these clinicians have also been able to provide identity-specific support. So they're going to continue on their good work in supporting students. It was mentioned earlier the dedicated support we have for the needs for grade 7 and 8 students for social worker support. So we'll continue to provide that service and also map out our plan for professional development learning for all our staff, which includes trauma-informed learning as well as concerns of suicide. And the follow-up to the student wellbeing service use and outcomes, we will continue to dig into that work and identify any gaps. So we will stop there now and take any questions or any suggestions or recommendations based on our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle and Dean. Appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions? Yep. Who has their hand up? Allison? Allison?
Yes, hello, and thank you, Michelle, and, for that presentation, and Dean.
A particular question I have relates to, obviously, the virtual secondary school will be closing. And so I would imagine that many of those students that are still in the virtual secondary school have additional mental health needs that have led to them being outside the regular school setting as we've exited COVID. What additional supports are going to be put in place to support those students as they transition back into a setting that they've not been in for probably 3 years?
I'll respond first. The student wellbeing team, along with principals, had done a lot of advanced planning work in terms of supporting the needs of students who would be returning back to regular school. There are going to be some limited options for returning in the upcoming year, but our focus mainly has been on supporting the students as part of a circle of support and care. So not only have we started to provide support of transitioning during this school year, we're also talking about transitioning for support. And in fact, we do have some programming that will support students who need more intensive support for wellness check-ins as we return back to regular school. I'll just turn over to Michelle if she'd like to add anything.
Thank you, Allison, for your question. I really appreciate your question. I know there has been some research to indicate that students who have been in virtual learning, there's a subset within virtual learners, and their mental health has suffered for sure. And I think our department has really been mindful and appreciative of that. So just to say that we've been working very closely with the secondary high school that offers the virtual to come up with a plan. They went into classrooms, they developed a series of workshops, lessons, activities, learning related to mental health awareness, help seeking, transition planning, preparing for change. Our clinicians have all been, we continue to provide that information out to students. As Dean mentioned, there could be some wellness check-ins. We did receive some government funding for some summer mental health supports. We know that money is earmarked to support students over the summer and during the transition to school, and certainly our virtual students would be one of the groups of students we really want to zero in and focus on to help smooth that transition as best as can be possible for those students. So I would say that we're aware of the students. We're certainly working closely in supporting those schools in increasing the awareness and the resources, and our own resources are flowing towards those students for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Melissa?
My question, I guess, is in relation to the trauma training that you had mentioned. I was curious as to the depth of the training that's being facilitated, and is it going to also have the ability to differentiate the different groups that it would be addressing, being Black, Indigenous, immigration students that are coming from war-torn communities. They would all have very different experiences of trauma, which would have to all be very specifically addressed in that training. So is that training being diversified, and how is it being diversified to address a lot of those different varying trauma concerns?
Thank you so much for that question. Yes, we kind of have like a general overview of trauma-informed approaches. We provided that to during a family of schools meeting for all of our administrators. And then as our department, we work closely with schools or even departments who are looking for more in-depth learning. So for example, I believe it was in December, we met with all of the ESL or MLL teachers. So we worked very closely with those IPLs. Staff were surveyed to hear what their learning needs were related to supporting their students. And then we, developed and provided more opportunity for the specifics. related to that. And certainly when we revised our trauma PD, we absolutely took a focus in terms of understanding racial trauma. And that as well as something that is part of our general trauma-informed approach, but also an opportunity for a more in-depth approach for sure.
Thank you. Kaisa?
Hi, Michelle. Just wanted to ask about the research project that is taking place at Centennial and Acton and Rattlesnake. And you may have mentioned this, but I'm just wondering about the timeline. When do you foresee having those results back? And is that going to impact planning for the coming school year?
Yeah, thanks, Kaisa. So yes, we are in time 2 of our data collection. So we will have all of our data before the conclusion of this school year. That will allow Maria to analyze and collate and report on the data. And it is our intention that will help inform action items for the upcoming school year.
Are there any additional questions? If not, I have one. Okay, so I have a question, I guess, pertaining to this survey. So you said it was mainly an online survey that was taken by kids and parents. I'm more interested in the children. Have you taken into account children who might not be able to do an online survey, and kids who might have an IEP, might be in a self-contained classroom, but you still want to understand, their well-being, their mental health, and kind of how did you include them? And if not, are you planning to include them in your research moving forward?
Thank you so much for that super important question. Absolutely. We wanted every and all student who was, part of the stratified sample to have an opportunity to participate in a way that was meaningful for them to participate. So part of the instruction to the administrators was, let's say, for example, it was their grade 10, all of their grade 10 classes. They were instructed to consider all of the learners and to be thoughtful about, would students need support in completing that survey? We had students who took a picture of the QR code because they wanted to go and meet with their special education resource teacher to complete the survey later. They wanted to take it home to complete it. We had, I believe, some students who preferred to have a paper copy of the survey. So we really wanted to create, remove all the barriers and create every opportunity for all students to be part of, have that opportunity to have their voice heard.
Thank you. Are there any final questions for Michelle or Dean? Okay, we will thank you very much, the both of you, for the presentation. We will move on to our next item. Okay, so item 2.3, we're going to ask Sean Marks, the Principal of Special Education Services, to provide us with a presentation on the Structured Learning Pilot Project.
Thanks very much for this opportunity to present. It's been roughly 2 years since we presented the first time on structured reading. It was in September of 2021. So one evening when you have some free time, I encourage you to go back in the minutes that can be found on the board's website for SEAC, and you can rewatch the video. I believe our present starts at the 13th minute, so that you don't have to watch the entirety of the presentation. But That was the starting point of the presentation of the work we had done, and it was after 1 year. This presentation brings us to now and the work that we've done over the past 2 years. So as part of that work, I'd like to introduce Shannon Gardy, who is also the instructional program leader in our department who oversees structured reading and the work we've been doing and has been instrumental in getting us to where we are now. And I'll share the presentation if I can find it. It looks like we are good to go. So as we're wont to do, as I'm wont to do during these presentations, sometimes we start slow and build up, and then we end with the really feel-good kind of ending to it. But I wanted to start with almost the ending, because I think what we always want to start with at SEAC is the voice of the students and the impact that the work we're doing has on them. So there's a little video that's got some testimonials from staff, parents, and some students. And that'll set the tone for what follows and remind us of who we're working for. So let's see if we can get this working.
In September 2020, HDSB Special Education Services launched a structured reading program for students with learning disabilities. Here is what staff and students have to say about the impact of structured reading being implemented in HDSB.
One of my favorite things about structured reading is that we are meeting kids where they are and explicitly teaching skills. Kids feel confident to participate because they have learned the skills to be successful.
So I just learned about structured reading as a teacher just this year, and I can tell you, as a teacher of students with learning disabilities, it has made a world of difference. Students are now reading. I had a student that wasn't reading at all at the beginning of the year, and I was trying everything that was in my toolbox that I didn't know about, and I just learned when I did the structured reading, he was able to really read, and he is so proud of himself, and he's able to follow the rules and the different, just the phonics that he's learned. And it's made a huge difference. So I am so grateful for this program as a teacher of students with learning disabilities.
This reading program has been extremely helpful for my son. For years, we did everything we could to advance his reading, but his progression was slow. All children are our future, and now I am proud to say that my son has a bright future ahead because of this reading program.
What did you think about reading before starting this program?
Hated it and it was terrible.
It was very difficult.
What do you think about reading now?
It's more enjoyable and I can read more fluently.
I've been in a lot of reading programs, but they only help you with the bare minimum. Now I feel like I'm actually gaining something and it's going to help in the long run.
I'm better at it and I want to keep doing it.
This program has been really helpful because I'm more confident with my spelling. When I read a book, I can read it more fluently and I don't get stuck often. I would recommend this program to anyone like me trying to get ready for high school.
I feel more confident and I feel that I'm improving a lot.
It's easier to read now.
I see a better future for myself.
that last line. So with that in mind, just a little aside, in over 25 years of education, this is probably one of the most powerful changes I have seen in helping students. And its impact is so immediate and so direct and so pervasive and so life-changing. The results of the work that's been done with the students and through the staff is incredible. I think that's the appropriate word for this. So we're just going to take you through the past 2 years very briefly to share what we've been doing and then what we're going to be doing next. And just as a reminder, the work that we're doing in special education services is around the Tier 3 support. And we've talked about that many times at SEAC. We're Tier 3, and you can see in the slide here, although it's yellow, so it's a little blurry on the big screen. It's necessary for a small number of students where it's precise and personalized programming. Tier 1 is the more generalized supports for students, where we have the large groups, those kinds of practices that support the majority of students, and then we determine from there where the additional supports might be needed. Some are short-term, some are longer-term. But the structured reading program is really a Tier 3. It overlaps into the Tier 2. And we're working with those students who have had significant challenges. In our first year, if you see the results on the previous SEAC presentation, there were students that hadn't read a single word for a very long time, and they were beginning to read very quickly with this program. So with that in mind, a focus on year 1, as you can see, this is just a brief recap. We had 5 structured reading itinerant teachers and 1 instructional program leader, and that was Sherry Rain. And she is an expert in the field of structured reading. And we looked to what programs might best serve Halton students. And so we began with a model where we provided direct instruction to 81 students in 14 self-contained learning disability classes. And you can see what we had worked on there. We trained the IRTs. They went into the classrooms and they worked with the students. And we saw significant improvements in certain areas, phonological awareness, decoding, and encoding, which is the primary focus of the structured reading program. And then we move on to year 2. So this was continued direct instruction, and it was when we began data collection for students from year 1, now in 30 different schools, because some of those students were in self-contained classes in year 1, but then moved either on to high school from our elementary schools or moved back to their home schools into the mainstream classes. So we followed them and we continued to provide support in those settings. And we started to build awareness with our self-contained learning disabilities teachers as well. So that was year 2 in developing the capacity of our staff specific to those classes. We expanded, we increased our number of IRTs, and we started to work with our speech and language pathologists as well. To include them. And then we started to include it as word got out. People were excited to bring this program on board and to adopt its processes to help support. So we had the not just the ability to provide the capacity, but we had people seeking us out, which is always the best model to have. And then we moved to year 3, the year we're in currently, and this was a year of significant capacity building within the system, and we'll get into some numbers a little bit later on. But you can see we expanded our IRT team. We're up to 8 IRTs right now, and they're out supporting schools, all 107 schools that we have out there. We still have the 1 IPL, Shannon sitting next to me, and greater collaboration with our speech language pathologists and our psych department as well. So it's an expanding model of support, and it's providing a significant impact across the system now. We still provide some direct support to students, but we've increased the capacity of staff across schools, and we'll see that, as I said. And we've got the new Tier 3 Science of Reading and online database with information and self-paced modules. I just want to make sure I didn't step on Shannon's slides. I apologize. And I'll turn it over to Shannon now to continue on. Feel free to add anything.
Nope, that was pretty thorough. But I'll go to the next slide. So realistically, this sort of building capacity system-wide started for us in the summer. So we had over 80 staff members of their own accord voluntarily come and attend 3 different days of in-services during the summer, just so that they could get an understanding of what structured reading was all about. So that was a large piece of our starting component for this year. We've had family of schools presentations. That system-wide structured reading tier 3 piece happened in the summertime. We've moved into EAPD sessions, so with educational assistants. They are getting some understanding of what that looks like, that structured reading process might look like. There have been lunch and learns at different schools when they've been asking for them. And then we're navigating, really building up the Wilson Reading Systems training and that phonological awareness. So we're using 2 different programs, essentially. One's Equipped for Reading Success, and that's Dr. David Kilpatrick. And then the other one is the Wilson Reading Systems, which is built on Orton Gillingham's work previously. So those 2 pieces are sort of the programs that we're navigating through. But with the structured reading IRTs, they're also supporting a deeper understanding of what structured reading actually looks like within those programs themselves, and teaching the SCLD teachers and the VRC teachers and CERTs how to be flexible within those programs and responsive to what the students actually need. Okay, so I'm going to take you through just a little quick exercise to sort of give you an idea of what explicit teaching means. So if this was a code that was put in front of you, I don't think any of you would be able to come up with this sentence. Right? So what we're sharing is we're looking for phonemes within the English language, and we're allowing students to actually learn and have a deeper understanding of what those English language rules are, so that they can then build on their reading systems. So if Sean continues it, so you'll see that if I add a phoneme now to the symbol, so the sun is an I. We as adults already know that an I standing by itself is a long I. But if we don't explicitly teach that to a student, how do they know the difference between what I is going to be and what I is going to be, right? How do they see that? So this is where this kind of reading program comes into place. So it'll explicitly teach the place and manner and voice of articulation, and then explicitly teaches different rules that they will learn so that they can in turn interpret what the code, the English code is. So if he continues, just go 3 or 4 times, yeah, the whole word. So we look at this one, and we know that A and N together for us means an, right? So we can sound that out. A student might not be able to do that unless they can explicitly be taught that A and N together make that sound. And then the C itself, we know that it's can, because we have learned that innately. Again, some students may need explicit teaching. So a C can be a soft C if they have something called a watch out vowel after it, which would be I, E, and Y, right? So like certain, cycle, and circus. Any of those ones would be a soft C, whereas in this case it's an A. So you have the word can. And you go into the next word. So again, we know that E and A together make a long E sound. So we would be teaching this explicitly to a student, saying, I can read, right? So now if you were to see these same symbols in a different sentence, you would know what each symbol means. So essentially what these types of programs are doing are breaking apart language, and it's supporting students in having a deeper understanding in how to read each section separately. So Equipped for Reading Success, in the next slide, you're going to see a little sample. Equipped for Reading Success really is built on breaking up phonemes and different sounds in different words, being able to peel off the beginning sounds, being able to add separate beginning sounds onto a word, and just being able to manipulate words that way. And then when we're looking at the Wilson Reading Systems, typically we could start at around a grade 2 level, but it navigates and gets deeper into the different rules. And it's an extremely extensive, intensive program, which is why we're using it within the tier 3. So there's a nice video from AJM, and they have a set of students working through different sections of this. So Kilpatrick, you'll see where there's conversation about the word cheek and teeth, that sort of comes from like the Kilpatrick type of learning, that Equipped for Reading Success. And then you'll see another one where they're doing tapping out sounds on their hands and where they're scooping words. And those really come from the Wilson Reading Systems.
Say cow.
Cow.
Instead of k, say h.
How.
Good. Say mix.
Mix.
Instead of say s.
6. W wind wa. Say zug z.
Cheek. Good. What letters say ch?
Oh.
Teeth. Yes, good job. What is that?
TH.
Is shop.
The winner is shop.
Shop. Good.
Winner is SH. At pat. Pet. 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 Pit. Pot. Pot.
Ready? Splash. Okay, now let's write it on our magnetic little computer. And then what says shh? Nice work.
Exterminate. Exterminate. Now closed, all controlled, closed, V dash E, exterminate.
So if you're like me and went through the school system a long time ago, that sounds an awful lot like sounding out. But what you heard there in the end with that last student was when he said are controlled and some of the words that they were using, we would say just sound it out. That's what my memory is. And for 80% of students who have gone through our system, that works. But what do you do, as Shannon said, when the word is can and the child sounds out the C as a S because the last word was celery or cycle? Because sounding out doesn't always work if you don't understand the rules of the English language. And these programs really explicitly and intensely teach those rules of how the letters and the phonemes, the digraphs all work together at different times. And we're seeing those results. So now we're looking at just some of the data. We'll go through this relatively quickly. As Shannon said, we are working specifically in our BRCs, our behavioral resource classes, and our self-contained LD classes. 37 of the LD and 6 BRC classes. So we have done, the IRT team has had 47 consultations. And I know the math doesn't seem to work out when you have more consultations than classes, but that's because we've had teachers who have been on LTOs and things like that. So it's the number of times we've gone into support that's the staff in those classes. The Wilson training, we've trained 39 staff. So all of our LD classes have trained staff running Wilson in there. And that's a 3-day intensive training session, plus the continued support from the IRTs. They're ready to go in and support. And then the Kilpatrick training, 37, and 6 in the BRC. Tier 3 reading training by school. So we have 90 elementary schools. We have 90 elementary schools who have at least one staff member Wilson trained. And that was completed this year, which is an impressive statistic. It speaks to the desires of the staff out in the system to want to be trained. And we could only go as high as 90 on this because it's it's a minimum of one. Many schools have more than one staff. I think that's a fair statement. Kilpatrick training is 71 schools. Remembering that Kilpatrick is also a primary program. So K to 3 is the general principle, and some of our schools are 6 and up, right? So not all of our elementary schools actually have primary classes, but this is also a number that is growing too, and it's part of our next steps. And then the consultations of our teams going in and supporting, this too is increasing. So we're at 77 schools that we've been in and supported, but some of the schools, so there's a variance of 13 right there between the 90 and the 77. Some of the schools just completed the Wilson training recently, so they're just at the beginning stages of being ready to have us come in and continue that support for them. So we're excited for that kind of work. Yes?
Quick question. How many elementary schools are there in Halton?
90.
Oh, there are 90. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. So tier 3 reading training by school. Is this one yours or mine? Oh, it's all mine now. Okay. Total number of schools. This is the secondary. So we have 17 secondary schools. Wilson trained is 11. We're just beginning to start working within the secondary schools. We obviously started with our schools with self-contained and our CPP programs. There's 6 schools with that. So beyond those schools with essentials and CPP program, we're in more than that. And again, we're continuing on with that next year. And then consultations, 15 of the 17 schools we've been in to support and started to work with. So secondary is in our next steps. And those students who have been in the program now and are moving on to secondary are able to receive continued support that way. And then you can see the breakdown of the Wilson training. I don't know if the colors come clear through here, but 133 certs in elementary school have been trained. In secondary, we're looking at 39. And then our behavior class is 6. Learning disabilities class is 39. And then New Street staff, so that's all of us as well, so that we know when we're going into support schools and our IRTs, we're looking at 18. And then our structured reading team is 4, which I know you're going to say we have 8. How is it that 4? This is this year's training. We've had new IRTs join our team. So the other 4 on the team have previously been trained. So all 8 IRTs are fully trained in Wilson and Kilpatrick and continue to participate in PD to improve their skills. We're really excited about this. And in the first presentation to SEAC, we talked about Wilson, and there was a question, because there are other programs available. One of the factors that we looked at in deciding the model we wanted to use for the implementation of structured reading was the ability to respond to students as they came to our board. As you know, we're a board that has students arriving all the time. And a lot of these programs are very prescriptive, meaning it's 115 lessons that have to be conducted sequentially. You have to start at the beginning of the year. And if you show up in October, I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait till next year. And that wasn't something we thought we could support. So we've, with the IRTs, with Shannon, with Sherry Rain, developed a program that allows staff and our board to adapt to when the student arrives and what the student's needs are. And so the program so far has been incredibly effective. And then moving forward, you can see that the 5 steps that we're going to continue with, which is monitor educator capacity. So again, increasing the number of staff in our system that are able to participate and support the program. Bring structured reading in as a tier 3 support to secondary schools. Structured reading within all elementary schools. Provide professional development to educators in the support of tier 3 implementation, which we are doing. Shannon and the team have put together a number of modules that are available online for staff to access through our portal, MyHDSB. And perhaps that's something SEAC would like to see some samples of next year. And collaborate with school programs and Indigenous Department and Equity as well to align Tier 3 structured reading with the Halton literacy model. So it's an expanding program. It's part of the whole board model of bringing literacy to students, and something we're very excited by. So thanks for the opportunity to share with SEAC, and Shannon and I will take any questions you have right now.
Thank you, Shannon and Sean. Yep, Robbie.
You talked about the impact this has had, and you showed us a bunch of outputs data. What's your outcome data, and how are you comparing it to treatment as usual? What exists in the absence of this program?
You're asking for the outcome compared to those who aren't participating in the program. That's challenging data to have, but we can certainly look into that. because right now all students in self-contained LD classes are receiving the model, and we want to keep it going. So in education, when we have a control group where we deny a service, it becomes a bit of a challenge. But to the question around the outcome, what we look towards is literacy rates, report card grades. We do have anecdotal data from parents and from students that we gather. Graduation rates, it's a little bit early for that right now because the program started in elementary and we're only in our third year. But the EQAO literacy test will also be a measure, those kinds of things. We're in the third year, capacity is right now. All students who have received this support are noted in our system, so we can find and monitor their progress throughout, even if they leave special education services or self-contained classes. So that's data that we will be looking at, but right now, most of the outcome data is pretty anecdotal. I can say we have outcome data for, I'm going to say 74 students in the program. We're over 300 students right now, 74 that were the original group. We have some significant data around the steps that they make through the Wilson program, and basing it on a 3 to 5 step increase over the course of their time with us.
Neat. I mean, in terms of comparison to treatment as usual, you can look at prior years of before the program was implemented. Not necessarily a perfect comparison when you're running into pandemic, it may get really messy. But and then the evidence base, not necessarily just from our board, but from beyond, and asking, if this is already established as a best practice, and we've got data to prove it, then we can go on that basis. But I would love to see that in this context of talking about what impact it's having.
We would love to see that too. That certainly the comparison with more of a provincial standard, and take a look at those numbers. I will say that the ministry has sought us out as an example of what programs can work. So we might be the leaders in that data, which I'm more than happy to stand behind. But I think moving forward, because of the right to read, we're going to see more boards adopt this and share that data, and the ministry be involved with that as well. So, yes. Colette?
If I could just add to that, in the first presentation that the team did on this work, they did share pre and post data with specific students to show that incremental growth over that time of the intervention. So if you're really interested in that kind of initial impact pieces, that was shared here last time. And we are working with research, right, to follow that initial cohort through their years to see how their outcomes improve.
Absolutely.
Great, thanks. Alison, you have a question?
Yes, and first of all, I really want to thank Sean and the team for all of their work and bringing in Wilson and Kilpatrick's work. Obviously, it's great to see the science of reading in place in our school board. Just want to clarify, so you've trained all certs in elementary schools. Are they offering Tier 3 intervention yet? Or I know that certs are very, very busy people. How many students are we actually going to be able to provide one-on-one Tier 3 intervention for in regular schools, bearing in mind how busy certs are?
I believe that's number 6 on my moving forward chart to determine that, Alison. Not all certs are trained yet. We started with primary certs first. So you saw the number of 133 in elementary, and we have 181 certs. I think that was in the SPED plan as well. So we are increasing that number. There's another session, I believe, in a week where another, let's say, approximately 25 certs are going to be trained, and then we'll continue on with next year. And it's going to be ongoing because as staff change their roles, more certs will come in, and then some of these certs go back into classrooms and take that learning with them. So you've asked a tiered level question. The training is going to be ongoing, the capacity building within the system. Then in terms of the number of students we can ideally meet, the needs of. We're talking tier 3 students or those who need tier 3 interventions. And this program does allow us to have small groups, 2, 3, something along those lines, where they have similar profiles and can receive, they're at the same steps and can receive their instruction that way. So the capacity and the ability is something that we are talking about with the team. But again, it's not just going to be the CERTs. It's going to be classroom teachers. It's going to be our department working together. I don't have a definitive answer for you. I'd love to be able to say exactly what those numbers are. But I think that's something that we can speak to next year at this time, because we'll have gone through an entire year of capacity building and really seeing the impact in the schools and what that looks like in direct support for students from the school-based staff.
Okay, great. And so you will be tracking how many students actually receive tier 3 intervention through Wilson or Kilpatrick's methodologies?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Kaisa?
Just from a parental perspective, what's the level of involvement or building capacity in parents whose students are receiving this support?
I can take that.
Go ahead.
That's a great question. That also is something we're looking towards. Parents are at different stages of their understanding of structured reading and the science of reading. We have seen an increase in parent awareness because of the right to read. And so parents are taking the initiative to learn more about it. As that happens, we are offering supports through the schools and conversations with the CERTs as well. Can it be something we look towards providing additional information sessions for parents and those kinds of things? Absolutely. But similar to all aspects of how we teach and curriculum related matters, helping the parents become supports with us is something the teachers and schools have just always done as regular practice. So this would be folded into that as well.
Great question, Kaisa. Alison?
Sorry again, Sean. Obviously, this is great. This is tier 3. In terms of, could you just remind me, in terms of tier 1, general, good for everybody, what are the methodologies or approaches that our regular school staff are using? Is it, obviously there's lots of things like UFly, all those kind of things. What kind of supports do our kindergarten, grade 3 staff have for supporting and implementing the science of reading in the regular classroom?
So right now, what school programs has put forward is they've run at least 2 sessions for kindergarten classes, and then they are kindergarten teachers, and then they've run a couple of sessions for grade 1 and grade 2, just kind of separated from each other. But Mesmers is one of the programs that they're focusing on, and then Flyleaf is the other one that we're using. So within tier 2, we've sort of been able to bridge Flyleaf in with the Kilpatrick material, and then if the students need further, then they move towards Wilson. But right now, so tier 1 looks more like it's concentrated on those 2 other programs. So that's Mesmers, and if you look it up, I believe it's called Teaching Letter Sounds, and I think that's probably it. Teaching Letter Sounds, and I think there's another piece to that title, but I can't remember off the top of my head. And then Flyleaf is the next one that they're working on. So there's 2 already that are both, the Flyleaf is decodable books. So,
Great.
And it gives also the staff a scope and sequence to follow.
Great, thank you. And just a quick follow-up, sorry. Are the ministry going to be mandating what gets used? I mean, obviously you're sort of saying you're a leader, and hopefully that means you don't have to recreate the wheel if the ministry comes out with something else. But is the ministry going to mandate what schools have to follow?
Sure, I can jump in and answer that this year. We have been able to do everything that we've done this year with Wilson. Because the ministry has provided some very targeted funding for special education and the tier 3 interventions. And what they did, Allison, is they gave us a range of options from which to choose. So they gave us a bundle of money and they said, here are, I think there was 6 or 8 programs on the list and gave school boards some flexibility to select within that within that framework. So Wilson being on that list, Kilpatrick being on that list as well. So that we did our own kind of research and analysis and decided that that was going to be the best fit for our work, but there were some other options on there. And I suspect as they really, roll out and emphasize the tier 1, tier 2 program expectations in schools this upcoming year, that the money will be tied to a kind of a short list of options, would be my guess, but we haven't seen that yet. But I also want to add that we have been working with school programs, the Indigenous Rights and Education team and the Equity team now for 2 years on designing a tiered intervention model for literacy, for early literacy. And we've rolled out a phonological awareness screening tool and a phonemic awareness inventory. We use those tools to support targeted instruction. We have embedded it in our problem-solving pathway to make sure that we're leveraging our sphere of influence with school teams to use that tool to identify needs of students early on. And we are going to continue to collaborate so that our tiers align. So we haven't worked in complete isolation on this work, and we'll continue to collaborate with those departments to make sure that our tiers scaffold and become intensify the strategies that we use for students. But we know that there's certainly going to be a great emphasis on those earlier tiers or those lower tiers next year.
Thank you.
Yeah, Robbie.
You mentioned this was possible because of specific ministry funding. Was that through PPF? And what happens when that funding goes away?
So, the initial rollout is always the most expensive, right? To get that initial training and scaling up of skills. It will come to our department and prioritizing it within our own operational budget to sustain that over time.
I have a question. Maybe this is for Shannon, I'm not sure. So you mentioned the structured reading 3-day in-service this past summer. And then Kai's question talking about sports at home. And I'm thinking of sports generally for these kids who might have additional needs. EAs are such a huge piece of that. Is this only kind of like those voluntary kind of training programs and stuff? Is that only to the teachers in the classroom right now? Or do you include your EAs as they support this with those students?
So the one that you're initially talking about, the one that happened during the summertime, that was offered to any of the SCLD teachers, BRC teachers, and any CERTs. So at that point in time, yes, it was just the teachers. But during the year, there's 2 different times where there are EA trainings available. And so this has been offered with the 8 IRTs that we currently have. We were able to run 4 sessions each time. So the EAs did have a lot of opportunity to step in and go and experience some pieces of the structured reading.
And just as a follow-up, thank you. Is that's voluntary? Like they choose to do that? I imagine just getting the supports to support the EAs when they leave the classroom is sometimes tricky. So
they can. So those sessions, the EAs do choose which session that they attend. But I would say probably the majority of them have at least attended one of those sessions. So they at least have an understanding, right? Their role typically isn't to do programming per se, but at least they can support the programming because now they have an understanding of what that looks like.
Right, and I absolutely, the support is so important once you're, trying to indoctrinate that into the kids doing it. Okay, thank you. Any additional questions? Okay, before we move on, we would like to thank Sean for his dedication to this role over the last 5 years. Sean will be moving to a school principal role now that his convent is over, and we wish him the best at the future. And Sean, you're not going to see the end of me because you're at my home school, I think.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure working with SEAC for 5 years. I mean, through probably some of the toughest times education or the world has ever seen in one regard, in terms of maintaining students' needs. So I want to thank you for the work you do. It's essential that we work together, and we've made some significant changes over the past 5 years, things that I'm really proud of. And I'm really excited that Conan, Principal Spruan, is going to be taking over as well. He's an incredible leader, and you're in excellent hands. So I'm leaving feeling really good about how things are with SEAC. And thank you for allowing me the time to be here. Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thanks, Shannon. Okay, so we will move to item 2.4 now. We have Community Living. They're going to provide us with a presentation on their services and supports. So we'd like to welcome Nadia and Evelyn.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Nadina Torek, and I'm the Manager of Children Inclusion Services. And here with me, I have Evelyn, and she is also a Manager of Inclusion Services at Community Living North Halton. If you guys can give me a second, I'm just going to share our screen here. So thank you for having us present tonight. So we are going to be talking about community livings and children's inclusion services in Halton. So children's inclusion services programs are housed and we are employed by the community livings. Children's inclusion services is just like a very small part within those CLB programs that provide support to childcare programs and school age programs. Community livings in general are mainly services for adults and adolescents with developmental disabilities. Children inclusion services, as I said, is support for children 0 to 12 years of age in childcare programs and school age programs. CLs are funded by the Ministry of Social Services, while children's inclusion services is funded by the Ministry of Education. In Halton, we have 3 agencies that provide children's inclusion services. We have Community Living Burlington, who provides services in Burlington, and we have 6 resource consultants. We also have Community Living North Halton that services Milton, Acton, Georgetown, and Halton Hills, and they have 9 resource consultants. CLs are geographically bound, which means when our caseloads are reached capacity, then the region can support the overflow, which is the 3rd agency then is Halton Region. They service mostly Oakville, but again, they can come into Burlington, Milton, Georgetown, Acton, and Halton Hills, and they have 19 resource consultants. All 3 agencies are very closely work together to provide consistent service model in Halton. The managers of these programs meet at least once a month. All our paperwork is exactly the same. Our training is done together. So regardless of which service is, which program provides a service, it's exactly the same for all of our families. Accessing services. So inclusion services provide support in quality inclusion in licensed childcare programs, nursery schools, private home childcare centers, as well as school age programs. Services are available for children from birth to school entry, which means once they reach the JK age, we do technically discharge, but then we can support them and continue with working with them in the school age programs. Supports are available for any concerns relating to child's development or participation in the program. No diagnosis is needed, and referrals are done by the families or the child care programs if they have consent from the families. And all they do is they just contact Halton Access 311, and they're able to get our supports. We work together to ensure that families are linked to the right services. We work with other providers like ROC and Reach Out Center for Kids, any private providers as well. Our program is free of cost and it's voluntary. Parents can withdraw from the service at any time. As I said, we do provide school age programs with support as well. This is a classroom-based support for these programs. Referrals are made to the program by the program to the designated inclusion service agency. So that means if it's a school is in Burlington, they would contact myself and I would send in a resource consultant to support them. Now, currently we are working in a cluster model of service, which means that the resource consultants are assigned to specific centers that they support. We are able to support the centers that have identified children in those centers, but we are also able to support the centers that don't have any children. That would be if they're looking for support around inclusion, and then we are able to support them around that. And then Evelyn is going to take some time to just talk about what it means to work with a consultant.
Yes. Thank you, Nadina. Good evening, everyone. By the way, sorry I was late this evening. I had a child concert to attend, so here I am, just zooming into this. So yes, thank you, Nadina, for the introduction. I'll just go through a little bit about what working with consultants is like. So just to start off, our program in each of the agencies, CLB, CLNH, and Halton Region, have agreements with each of our childcare centers that we service through a memorandum of understanding. So that just kind of solidifies our partnership and how we work together. And really, it's about these key pieces. So we're about, the key is collaboration. We go into the childcare center as a guest in the classroom, and we work closely with the educators, building rapport, relationship, building that safe and secure, communication plan and relationship in order to do the work that's necessary around supporting the environment. So collaboration would definitely be the key in promoting inclusion. We facilitate ongoing goal setting with families. So really like the key point in service for families is to develop what's called a family center plan, where again, we're collaborating with the family to hear from a strength-based perspective where they're at with their child, where they want to go, and then what we can be doing to support the educators sort of on the floor to be able to achieve that and to develop some strategies for success. Where necessary, some service coordination can be offered. Nadina mentioned identifying services. So sometimes families come into service and they aren't aware quite yet about Erin Kids or accessing speech and language, OT, PT, whatever it may be. So we might be doing some referrals there, supporting them with accessing services at Rock or other areas of the community where relevant. And as mentioned here, we do that for the family and for the child as needed, but also for the center. There's a lot of resources out there that centers can access. So the RC, the consultant, can really be navigating that with the center and kind of plugging in where appropriate, what could be supportive. And we do a lot of liaising with those respective agencies in order to meet those needs. We talked about referrals to other agencies. And of course, this is where we kind of bridge with the school board is the transition to school. So at the stage where a child is reaching the age of eligibility for junior kindergarten, we would be doing some information sharing with parent consent to allow sort of that relevant information sharing to plan and prepare for the needs coming up in the fall around individual children. And that could look like sharing documentation, attending case conferences, facilitating and liaising with the visits from the school to the childcare where appropriate. So it's always a little bit different for every situation, but generally speaking, that's what the transition to school service looks like. And then in the fall, should there be necessary, the family or the school can reach out. We can do some collaboration at that point as well to kind of bridge some of those pieces for greater success. Definitely, like we said, collaborating with other communities and agencies and facilitating professional learning. So that's a big one too, is particularly with the state of the childcare sector right now and the staffing challenges. It's about really getting opportunities for the staff in the centers to attend professional learning through Rock, through our staff, doing lunch and learns, that kind of thing, and really building up people's capacity to do the important work they do every day. So that's in a nutshell what RCs do. So how we do our work. We, as I mentioned, use a family-centered practice. So focusing in on where the family's at with their child, what's their greatest area of need, where they want to go, with the direction they'd like to go in. And then, of course, hearing from the educators as to what their greatest needs are and kind of building those bridges there to develop a plan. We use what we call a coaching interaction style. So it's this way of connecting with anyone in a way that respects where they're at and really listens to what maybe small step they can take at this time to sort of scaffold that success. And we do that in a way that's based in adult learning principles and sort of following the intention of the people that are doing the caregiving for the children in order for them to feel like they can do this work and do it well. So we do that primarily with the educators as we're going in and doing that work in the classroom, but certainly as well with the families to be able to hear where they're at, what do they need, where do they want to go, and doing so in that coaching interaction style. We talk a lot about the F words, which we often chuckle at because it sounds funny, but the F words are what you see in front of you here: function, family, fitness, friends, fun, and future. And they are a child development framework that comes out of CanChild at McMaster. We're highly involved in a research project to demonstrate the efficacy of this model in a strength-based holistic approach to supporting children for success in terms of their developmental goals and their next steps their family wants to see. So I think at this time, Nadina is going to click on a video, and we'll just give you a little snapshot into what the F words are as one of the focal points of our service.
I am going to attempt this. I've never done this with Teams, so let's see if this works.
Oh, right. Well, if it doesn't work, we can always send the link. Thanks, Nadina.
Sorry, is this working? Are you guys able to see it?
No.
No.
I'm not seeing
Okay.
anything. No.
Let me stop my share and see if I can try this again.
It's really only like a 2-minute video, so it won't take too much time. So I'm not sure if other people in the board or in various organizations use the F words in their work, but it really is a great way of, oh, here we go. I'll stop talking. It's coming up, Nadina.
Oh, awesome. Here we go.
I'll tell you if the sound works. I don't think so. No, it's not.
Oh, too
Well,
bad.
you know what we'll do? We'll put the link in the chat, and then if others would like to check it out. Essentially, the F words are based on the World Health Organization's classification of functioning, and these words have been sort of brought out in order to zone in on certain very significant areas of a child's life in order to hear what they can do and hear the experience of their world from their perspective in their words, and particularly that of their family and their caregivers. So please do check it out if you're interested. And yeah, we'd be happy to connect around some of the other areas of anyone else using the F words in their work. So I'm not sure if there was any other slide after that one, Nadina.
Yes, there is. Just give me guys a second.
No problem.
All right. So we wanted to take a little bit of time just to talk about our community livings as well, and some of the programs that they offer as well. So we have multiple different programs, and obviously Children's Inclusion Services is just one of them. We also at Community Living Burlington have employment services and the GROW program. So that employment services program team helps individuals identify skills and abilities. That the team serves as trainers and advocates and facilitators, and they help find and pair individuals to jobs opportunities within our communities. And then the GROW program also helps to prepare individuals for that employment as well. We have life share programs. This is just, these are family hosts that provide support and opportunities for developing skills for individuals while they live away from their parents. So this is for adolescents and adults as well. We do have residential programs, and we have two type of kind of residential programs. We have 24-hour supported group living, and we also have supported independent living. So the residential 24-hour supported programs they vary really in levels of support that is in those homes. Again, it depends on the individuals that are living in those homes. For example, CLB has 30 different homes that we support within Halton, within those 24-hour supported programs. The supported independent living programs are really for individuals that are living on their own or with the family members, and they are. At this point, they're getting support from the program, and they're working on developing housing, household management, budgeting, self-care, menu planning, and assistance with appointments and things like that. We have virtual programs. This is actually something new that was developed during COVID. So it is actual virtual programming. So through the Zoom platform, there's monthly schedules where families and individuals can sign up for programs, things like cultural learning, dancing, fitness classes. There's a variety of programs that they'll be able to access virtually, and this is something that's continuing on after COVID as well. And we have the respite program. So this is after school or Saturday program, respite program that families can access and get support through Community Living Burlington. And I think Evelyn's going to go through some of her programs. Some of them are exactly the same. Some of them are slightly different. But again, this is just a brief overview of the programs that we have. So please go on our websites and we can send the links to those as well. And you guys can see the different programs and the services that are available and how to access them as well.
Yes, thank you. So no, I think Nadina has demonstrated well how Children's Inclusion Services is really one part of our very broader organizational programs that we have. A lot of what Nadina just listed does exist in Community Living North Halton. In addition, I would say maybe many of you are familiar with the Lunchbox Cafe that's located at Community Living North Halton. So we have that inclusion work program in terms of offering employment opportunities and skill building for people in a sort of a real work setting. And of course, the cafe is pretty wonderful. Then we have within Children's Services itself, we have inclusion, we have the Rec and Leisure program that goes up to 21. And then we also have our Ontario Autism program in which we house one of the entry to school programs as well as the ABA therapy clinical program. So yeah, there's lots of different social, employment, housing, and different transition programs for individuals coming into our adult services. And like Nadina said, that we would encourage you to please navigate the website and bring forward any questions around the other programs in our agencies. As mentioned today, was really focusing in on the collaborative work that Nadina and I do in terms of children's services and our collaborative work with Halton Region around providing that in childcare. Mm-hmm.
That's
we would
wonderful.
welcome any questions at this time. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Nadina and Evelyn. I've personally used your services for one of my kids, and it was wonderful, especially because if you haven't had to do it before with a neurodivergent child, it's not always easy to kind of traverse the path and figure out where you need to go. So your group was wonderful. So thank you. Any questions? Yeah. Are there any questions online? Well, great. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so we are now at item 3.0, which is the SEAC discussion question period. If anyone has any specific questions or topics they would like to raise, please raise your hand either in person or through the chat. Okay, well, we do have one question from the public, which I can read out now. The question is, how might we reimagine a more inclusive name for the LD classrooms in our schools in Halton?
I can answer that.
Sure.
Yeah, this is certainly something we have been thinking about and talking about as a team. Knowing that we want to honor the dignity of our students and protect their identities, and most of our classes have a bit more of a covert name, but our learning disability classes really highlight the need or the disability of the child in that class. So it is something that we're talking about and thinking about how would we go about a consultation process, how would we capture the voices of our students and our families in order to arrive at a name that works for everyone. So this will be something that our team will be looking into a little further next year.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone? Sure. Sure. Oh, yeah, that's a great point. Okay, so we had some people who joined late, I believe, and we wanted to see if they would like to vote on this special education plan. So I know Evelyn's here. Would you like to vote on the special education plan, Evelyn? It would be approve or not approve. Oh, okay. Evelyn has approved. We also we were waiting on Sophia. Has she joined? Okay. And then Carol, I'm so sorry. I skipped you. Would you like to vote on it?
Okay, yeah, I would vote in favor.
Perfect. Thank you. And the only other would be Naveed, but he's not here today. Okay, great. Thank you. So now we will move on to item 4.0, which is communications to SEAC. We have item 4.1, which is the superintendent's report. So you have all received a report from Colette. I will ask Colette to provide a brief summary of her report. And if you have any questions, please let us know.
Certainly. So I'm happy to just hit a few highlights around our summer learning. So the ministry has provided, again, $220,000 to run summer learning and transitions for students with special education needs. As was mentioned in the student wellbeing presentation, we are really focusing a large portion of those funds on supporting the transitions of students who have mental health needs or special education needs coming out of a remote learning, but also all of our students who benefit from that intensive transition back into school in late August or the beginning of September. So we are partnering with all of our departments. So our schools teams can access school-based staff, staff in our department, student well-being. We also have included staff in the Indigenous Rights and Education department for any Indigenous students who would benefit from transitional support, as well as supports in our equity department. So we are kind of broadening the scope of those transitional supports. We've also partnered with Gary Allen, who runs our summer learning programs for students in grades 7 to 12, ensuring that all students are able to access their programs by funding some educational assistance support in their offerings. I'm going to have Sean speak about ASSDP, if you don't mind, because that's a program that he's leading this summer.
Thank you. So similar to last year, we are running at 3 different sites. Right now it's at Charles Baudouin. Halton Village is on my mind. It's Irma Colson and Captain Wilson, the program for kindergarten students with ASD. So they could be in JK or SK, and it's an intensive program, 5 days. We're running 4 cycles of those in the morning, working on social skills, classroom-based strategies around interactions with other students, those kinds of things, aligned with our social thinking programs. And this year, we've also included grade 1, so students who will be entering into grade 1, because we know that from kindergarten to grade 1, there's a significant transition. So that program is up and running. We're anticipating roughly, I want to say 35 to 40 students receiving some of this intensive supports. And this is a preliminary summer offering that will then continue on through ASSDP in the future as well. Thank you.
You're the next 2 items. You want to keep going? Special athletes track meet?
Absolutely. The exciting day is upon us soon. I believe it's June 16th. I'd say a rain date. I'm hoping there's not a smoke in the air date that we need to concern ourselves with, but we're excited. Schools are getting ready, and I know that SEAC had asked for those invitations, and Lorna will be sending those out this week. They're just being finalized now, but please hold the 16th at Garth Webb, starting around 9 o'clock. Opening ceremonies are at 10, and it's going to be a fun-filled day, so looking forward to seeing everyone there.
And keep going, Aspen update. I'm making him work for his last meeting.
So, Allison, are you there? I don't know if she can hear me. Allison or Diane? No, it's quiet. Well, this will be on record. So we have been working with Aspen, our new IEP vendor, and they have our engine, and I mentioned it before, but we are now able to identify students or put on the IEP for record keeping specific diagnoses, so that if you, as we've presented the IEPs to SEAC, we have roughly 12,000. 6,000 to 7,000 are for students who are identified. And the question, since I've started, has been, how do we know about the other students if they're not identified? How are we serving students with various exceptionalities if they haven't gone to IPRC? And now we have that ability through the new engine. So students, we will be able to, with parent permission, of course, place on the IEP the exceptionality. Parents don't need to, and students don't need to go to IPRC to have that. And then as a system, we'll be able to fully understand our students and the exceptionalities for those with IEPs and support.
Thank you, Sean.
Is that Diane?
That's me.
It took me 5 years, but I'm glad we were able to present today.
We finally got it. Okay, thank you.
And we know that LDA-HH or the Diverse Learners has really championed this work, and Sean's been on board 5 years, but he got it done.
and although I'm the one presenting, it really is the team of IPLs who have worked to get Aspen up and running for our department. So thanks out to them too.
And just lastly, a few thank yous and goodbyes and a welcome. So sadly, this is Sean's end of his 5-year term. So this role is a termed position. And so he will be returning to a school in September. And he has many accomplishments to be proud of in these 5 years. Of note, he's been a driving force in the implementation of structured reading, as you heard tonight, as well as the structured learning class pilot and the vision for supporting students with autism that is going to unfold next year. On a personal note, Sean has been a true partner, a collaborator and a friend, and I'll really miss working with him. But at the same time, I'd like to welcome Conan Spruan. He will be the new principal of special education. And Conan brings a wealth of knowledge and passion in supporting students with special education needs and a real depth of knowledge around early literacy intervention. So we're going to really capitalize on his expertise. And I have no doubt he's going to pick up where Sean leaves off. And I know your skills are going to be a great asset to the team. So thanks, Conan. And I'd like to thank all of you for joining SEAC or returning to SEAC this year. I know it's a voluntary position, and I really greatly appreciate your voice, your passion for our students and for our work, and your wisdom in how we can better serve our students and our families. So thank you, and I look forward to this work again with you next year.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to item 4.2, which is the association reports. Please indicate with your hand or in the chat box if you would like to share something. Nothing? Okay. We will move to item 4.3, which is the trustees report. Carol?
Just a couple of quick updates from trustees. Firstly, we are very happy to welcome Robbie Bryden to the board as our newly elected trustee representing Burlington Wards 1 and 2, and also to the SEAC table this evening. So welcome, Robbie. Trustees were also pleased to welcome Minister of Education Stephen Lecce to North Oakville last week for the groundbreaking ceremony on a new state-of-the-art elementary school that is desperately needed and will be constructed and scheduled to open for the 2024-25 school year. So everyone's very excited about that, especially families who are in the overextended schools that are in that area. So new school for new communities. And that's it for us to this evening.
Great, thank you. Okay, now on to item 4.4, which is the committee reports. So at this time, I'll go through the list of standing committees and ask for any updates from the SEAC representatives on these committees. So first, we'll start with Accessibility and Coordinating Committee. So Evelyn Bursey.
Sorry, hi there. Yeah, there was no major updates except that there are some dates now booked into the fall. So I'll have more of an update, I think, in the fall.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, the Mental Health and Wellbeing Strategy Steering and Advisory Committee. I know that Kate is not here this evening. Did she send any notes in advance? Updates? No? Okay. Human Rights and Equity Advisory Committee. Kaisa.
No updates at this time.
Thank you. And Indigenous Advisory Council. Melissa?
No updates.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now we are on to item 5.0, the next agenda order paper. Are there any items that committee members would like added to the upcoming agenda? And I can't recall off the top of my head if this is already on the list for September, but I would like to hear the results, or I'd like Sean to present the structured learning class pilot information.
Well, it won't be Sean, but
I don't know.
but yes, absolutely.
I'd like to hear the results from that.
Absolutely, we can do a presentation on the structured learning class.
Any other additions? Okay. So at this point, we are at item 6.0. You've made it through my hosting of this. So we will be adjourning for the summer. So thank you all. Have a safe summer. Thank you for your time. And that's it. Thank you.
Stay safe, everyone.